Uh, we are going to get started in just a minute. I see some people still dialing in, so we'll probably get started at about 2 minutes after the hour. So please stand by for now. Thanks. Well, welcome everyone. It looks like most people have dialed in, so we're going to go ahead and get started today. First of all, thanks for joining the webcast today. Today's session is focused on today's trends in Chargemaster adjustments. Before we get started, I'm going to do some introductions, a couple of housekeeping items, just to make sure everyone's on the same page before we go ahead and get started. My name is Brad Josephson. I'm the Marketing Director here with PMMC. For those of you not very familiar with PMMC, we provide revenue cycle management solutions to over 400 hospitals across the United States, consulting services and software. Today's topic will be focused on Chargemaster adjustment trends. We've seen some interesting trends and some things have evolved over the years. So we're very fortunate to have Tara Bogart, who's an expert in this area, over 15 years of consulting experience, really kind of dive into these trends. Before we go ahead and get started, we would like to make this an interactive session. So we're going to have several polls throughout the session. So if you would go ahead and participate in those, it'll help us really make this more interactive and get an idea of kind of where everybody stands in this area. And we will also have some time for Q&A at the end. So there's a questions pane in your window. So if you do have a question, go ahead and type it in, and I will make sure to relay that to Tara at the end of the session. So with that, I'd like to introduce Tara.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Brad. Welcome to PMMC's webinar on today's trends in Chargemaster adjustments. Today, we're going to talk about two areas that PMMC has received an increased amount of interest in over the past year. The first one is Chargemaster adjustments with a gross neutral or gross decrease goal, and the second is pharmacy and supply rate adjustments. So first, let's start off with a poll. If you would, let me know how often you review your Chargemaster. Is this something done on an annual basis, every other year, or is it not something that's scheduled?
And I see the results coming in here. About 75% of you have voted, so we'll give it another couple seconds here while everyone puts in their responses. All right, well, we've got 75% in, and it looks like about 88% of you are doing this on an annual basis, once a year. Is that typical of what we see, Tara?
Yeah, it is. Most hospitals do adjust their charges before their next fiscal year. Okay. Brad, if we can close the poll, we'll keep going.
All right. Yep, it should be closed out, Tara.
Okay. Okay. My name is Tara Bogart. I'm the Vice President of the Consulting Division at PMMC, and I've been involved in strategic pricing initiatives for many years, overseeing Chargemaster adjustment projects for hospitals. I also played a lead role in the development of PMMC's Revenue Master software, and this is just took our Chargemaster services to the next level, and with some automated and integrated ways to link back to our contract management system to give us a little more flexibility. The first trend I want to discuss today is redefining Chargemaster adjustments. Historically, hospitals have raised prices on an annual basis to optimize their reimbursement. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. But a few years ago, requests started coming in to bring down a few charge codes in some of the visible areas. But more recently, the hospitals have approached PMMC with interest in significant price decreases, and this is likely due to the consumer price shopping and transparency that we've seen in the market. Some have looked towards overall gross neutral adjustments with just a small increase in net revenue, while others have targeted gross revenue decreases with minimal impact to net revenue. For hospitals who've managed to keep some of the percentage charge contracts, the gross increases still prevail. Let's stop and take another poll. Has your hospital attempted to adjust charges without impacting gross revenue? I'm just wondering if anybody's done that yet.
And this one's looking a lot more split. So far, it looks like 40% have done it with success, 40% have not attempted, and another 20% have attempted but without success.
Okay. Well, great. Some of you are trendsetters out there.
And we'll let a couple more people vote. It looks like about 75% have voted, so we'll give another couple seconds here, and then we'll close this one out. Then we'll come through with the final results. Yeah, and it looks like those percentages I just mentioned held pretty true.
Okay.
About 46% have not attempted, and then 38% have with success, and the remaining tried it and weren't successful.
Okay, that's great. Well, hopefully we can share something that will help you no matter which box you checked. Okay, well, what type of Chargemaster adjustment would work best at your facility? And I have listed here 3 options. One is a traditional gross increase. And if you have percentage charge contracts, I can't really argue that this is the one for you. Another is reshuffling prices up and down with no overall change in gross to report to your payers. That's a popular one. Or do you think you could accommodate a price decrease without a financial strain? That's definitely something we're seeing the interest in, but it can be harder to achieve. The answer depends on your current market position, if you are high or low. It also depends on your financial position. If you really need the additional net revenue, decreasing the prices really won't be an option. If you're high priced and feel as if you may be losing business to lower price competition, a decrease may be appropriate. Also, if you're high priced and have concerns about transparency, a neutral or gross decrease may decrease your risk of negative publicity. Decreasing prices without decreasing net revenue, can it really be done? Well, my answer is maybe. It's a difficult task and it depends on your current prices and contracts. The most important factor is your contracts. If your top payers have little to no charge-based reimbursement, you may be able to decrease prices without losing net revenue. If you have a few areas in one or more contracts, such as lab or ambulatory surgery, it may prohibit you from reaching your goal. Here's something to watch out for. If you're decreasing prices, small payers with charge-based reimbursement may work against your goals. Sometimes when you add up the small payers that are paid a percent of charges, the impact is more significant than you might expect. If your top 10 to 15 contracts have no charge-based reimbursement, you may feel as if you can decrease prices without impacting the net revenue. But my warning is, don't be overly confident. PMMC's encountered instances where the other commercial bucket, if you will, is still large enough that it reduces your reimbursement no matter how strategic the price decreases are that you put in place. And for those of you who've tried this, you may have run into that. So a few steps when taking on a gross neutral or decrease. If you have little to no charge-based reimbursement, the first step is to combine the rate schedules and select the maximum reimbursement rate to use as a benchmark. You want to be sure your prices don't go below this threshold and hit a lesser of charges clause. You'll also need to identify charge sensitivity and charge volume associated with each code. It's helpful to rank the codes so you'll know which ones will affect your model the most. And next, you're ready to adjust charges to try and reach your goal. You'll likely try many different iterations and combinations to try and work towards your desired gross and net revenue outcomes.
And Tara, I'm going to jump in with a question, if I can here.
Sure.
On that last slide. How do you handle lesser of calculations when there might be a multiple charge or procedure codes on a claim?
Okay, well, we just talked about avoiding the lesser charges, and that's at the charge code level, at the line level, but that's a great question. It's a tough one. PMMC software has a lesser charges report that can make you aware of these hits, but you really have to research these patients to see which charge codes are driving the prices for those patients and which charge codes are common among the patients that are hitting the lesser of. And once they're identified, PMMC would target these charge codes for increases, so the total charge would increase and hopefully get you past that clause. The next step would be for us, would be to rerun the report after we've finished the price adjustments to see if we took care of the hits. But that's a great question. That is definitely a more complex issue that may need to be addressed.
Okay, great, thanks.
Another area of caution, if you're decreasing prices, is a fee schedule that is an outlier. PMMC's encountered instances where an older contract exists that was put into place years ago. It may not have been renegotiated and the reimbursement is high on it. Typically, this is a traditional product from one of the large payers, and the volume is really low. Depending on the volume on that contract, you may want to remove this fee schedule so you don't overinflate the lesser of charges benchmark for only a small amount of charge volume. If you decide to leave it in the calculation, you may not have as much room to decrease prices as desired. So a lot will depend on volume and how much higher those reimbursement rates run compared to your top contracts. The final step of a Chargemaster neutral or decreased project is to model the revenue impact. You'll need to track your results as you make pricing changes to be sure you're moving in the right direction. And it's helpful to be able to compare the results and watch your progress. It's also helpful to monitor your results at the payer level. In this example above, you can see we're monitoring some overall in the top portion of the table, and in the bottom portion of the table, we're specifically looking at payers. If you monitor the payers, you can tell which contracts may stand out. They may have terms that should be flagged for your next contract negotiation. So notice payer B in draft 1A, we've got negative 3.31, and other payers are having little impact. So it definitely stands out. This payer may work against your revenue goals. So this may be something you want to flag and go to this payer in your next contract negotiation and see if you can change those terms. Next, I'll move to the next trend I'd like to discuss, which is revisiting pharmacy and supply pricing. Typically, annual price increases exclude pharmacy and supply items. These items were marked up using a formulary and therefore just ignored when Chargemaster adjustment came into play. But now hospitals are no longer comfortable ignoring the prices. They want these areas to be defensible and ready for the pricing transparency as well. Let's stop and do one last poll. Just curious, when's the last time you reviewed your pharmacy and supply charges?
All right, we'll go ahead and launch that one. The options here, you can see are within the last year, within the last 2 years, or not regularly reviewed. We've got almost everybody's votes here. Give it another second. 85% have voted. That's a good turnout. So it looks like the results, about 70% have reviewed within the last year. 20% do not review this or do not regularly review this. And the remaining 12% or so have done this within the last 2 years.
Okay.
So Tara, what do you recommend here?
I'm proud of the audience that we've got 70% doing the review. That's great. We run into so many hospitals that really aren't on top of their pharmacy and supplies. They don't know exactly when they were put into place, how they work. Right. They feel like they have a handle on it, but they aren't necessarily given it the attention that it needs. So that's great to hear. Okay. Well, the first step is to know how your pharmacy and supply prices fit into the market. How your prices fit into the market is a loose statement, as you know, because comparative data really isn't available for pharmacy and supplies. Hospitals have different tiers and thresholds and minimums and different ways of deriving their charges. So this makes the comparisons difficult. PMMC has pharmacy and supply information from many customers, and we use our industry knowledge to help hospitals better align their prices with the market. But another source is the CMS MedPAR file. It actually contains some information that can let you know generally if you're high or low compared to the market. This graph was taken from PMMC's online analytics pricing tool. This is a resource consumption tool that shows how your charges break down by revenue code categories. So in this example, the first bar represents our client hospital. The next two bars are the competitors. The average charge per case for general surgery, we're looking at general surgery here, is $62,000. And this light green block here, this large block, represents pharmacy charges. You can see that the light green block for the competitors is a lot less. So even though the overall charge per case is lower at our hospital, 62 versus 73 and 65, the dollars associated with pharmacy, the pharmacy revenue code bucket, are significantly larger. And now if you take a look at supplies, supplies are the royal blue block, and again, they're significantly higher as well. there are two factors that determine the size of the block. That's price and usage. But clearly this hospital has pharmacy and supply charges that are more than double the competitors. So this would be a hospital where we look to move the prices down. A few things to consider when reviewing your pharmacy prices. Do you have fixed administration fees or minimum charges? Example would be a minimum on injectables, handling fees for different classes of drugs. Most facilities do have this, but if you don't, probably should be added. It can be a way to be sure you're covering your costs aside from inflating the cost of the drug. Another possibility to consider is eliminating charges less than $10 or $15 if you haven't already done so. This is a significant step in transparency and can often be done by offsetting the revenue with other drugs and tiers. We've had several hospitals come to us needing assistance with this, and it doesn't seem to be that difficult to help and also cover your revenue. And then where does the cost data come from? Is it up to date? Is it refreshed on a regular basis? And does it cover the overall cost of the drug, including your acquisition costs, labor costs, handling costs, administration, etc.? We've run into several hospitals where they have cost data, but they're not really sure how complete it is, and that obviously impacts your profit margin. Okay, so a few of the steps. After carefully linking charge goes to the markup formulas, one way to achieve your pricing or revenue goals is just to change the markups currently in place. That's an easy one. A more involved approach would be not only change the markups, but also test changes to your different thresholds and tiers. Redefining the tiers may allow for more flexibility if needed to meet your goals. And it's very important to work closely with the pharmacy director. Oncology drug prices can be complex, and there may be dosage issues, changes to generics, all kinds of things that you may need to factor in. They must approve your methodology and be on board with the changes. I can't stress that enough. I think that's where you run into problems, where your model's not accurate, where you could have avoided any issues if you had worked more closely with the pharmacy director. And the final step is to model the changes through your historical patient claims data to understand your revenue impact. Okay, next we're going to look at a chart. And this slide shows an example of two drafts where pharmacy charges less than $10 were removed and a few cardiology supplies were reduced by 15%. So let's look at draft A. We have our gross revenue, net revenue impact, pharmacy. We're removing charges anything less than $10. You can see the results. And then in draft B, we took out some of the decreases to your cardiology supplies, and you can see how that impacted your gross revenue. Didn't really have an impact on net. But it's important to watch what happens with your gross and net decrease. Also, the number of codes decreased, kind of what's going on when you're making these adjustments. All this is really good information to track. It's just helpful to see the impact of your different thresholds and markups, just to make sure you're moving in the right direction. So we discussed modeling the impact of Chargemaster changes and pharmacy and supply changes. Modeling is often done using a contract matrix and a revenue and usage file. And this methodology was certainly sufficient in the past, especially when you were doing 5% price increases, and you were increasing your charges. If the model was off slightly, the hospital could usually absorb the error. But when striving for a gross neutral impact or a decrease, precise modeling really is imperative. PMC loads the contracts and the actual claims. When a draft is complete, the historical patients are repriced using those proposed prices you've just come up with, and then run them through the actual contracts to get your expected reimbursement. This is compared to the current prices to know the true impact. So here you have your different contracts listed, and you have your charges at today's prices and your expected reimbursement. And this is for, in this example, your CDM as a 10-1. And then you have your repriced draft 4B. And that's just an example of some prices that you've been working with. And now you reprice those patients, the historical patients, using those prices. And now you can see your charges are higher, or they may be lower if you're lowering charges. In this example, we're increasing prices. But you can see how your total charges change and what your new reimbursement is going to be and your change in your net revenue. So the report is just a sampling of modeling results. But the accuracy of this methodology, along with the automation of such a complex process, truly does take your modeling to the next level. Well, I hope I've given you a few things to think about and raise some questions that may help you take your Chargemaster adjustments to a new level. I'd like to open up for questions at this time. It sounds like some of you have tried the price decreases and are looking at your pharmacy and supplies. That's great to hear. Would love to hear your experiences or questions. So at this time, please let me know.
Yeah, we'll open it up for questions. Thanks so much, Tara. You should see the questions window tab in your GoToMeeting panel. So if you just want to go ahead and type in there, I'm keeping an eye on them so I can pass them right along to Tara whenever they come through. It looks like we do have one here, Tara. So this hospital has recently acquired several physician practices, but they're not reviewing or setting their charges. If they plan to do so in the future, how would you advise handling this?
That's a great question. Yes, actually, that's kind of been a trend as well. We've seen a lot more requests for physician rate adjustments. And these are a little more straightforward than on the hospital side, since the data is at the line level, not the claim level. The most important task is to be sure you're priced a minimum of maybe 10% higher than your highest fee schedule, just to give yourself a little buffer and avoid the lesser of charges language. We've also been asked to put a defensible pricing policy in place, and this is usually some type of markup maybe by specialty off of RBRBS. It just makes it makes it easy to set new prices, and it gives you a defensible pricing policy in place.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions from the audience? Here's another one. What about recommended steps for setting charges in freestanding AMSurge and diagnostic centers?
We actually get that question quite a bit. There is benchmark data available in the public use files from CMS for freestanding surgery and diagnostic centers. The data set lags behind a couple of years. I mean, even older than your MedPAR or outpatient data that runs about a year behind. So this one's a little older, but you can still trend the data, and you have access to your competitors' prices at the HCPCS level. So, and I believe it's reported by facility and physician. So there is good data out there to help.
Okay. Let's see if we have any more coming across here. Here's another one. We may be acquiring new physician groups or equipment in the future, so adding new services. How do you recommend setting a new service or new charge codes without this historical data available?
Well, sometimes 3.5 times Medicare is the only benchmark you have. It's okay to start here, but I would just make sure you mark your calendar to check when the market data, the next market data will be released. Because the biggest mistake is really to set a price without confidence and forget to revisit it. Sometimes you have to, take what you can get, but just make sure you come back and revisit it. Also, contact PMMC. There are other data sources and recommendations. It depends on what you're trying to do, what your needs are.
Okay. What about handling a situation where there might be the same CPT code on multiple charge items?
That's very common. Yes, Medicare pays the same amount for a CPT regardless of the charge item or departments associated with. So it makes sense to have CPT parity, but as most of you out there know, there are many instances where the charges differ and it's a valid reason. So for clients wanting to move towards CPT parity without the adverse revenue effect, we recommend selecting a charge code with the highest charge volume and just using that price, applying it to each of your charge codes. It's important to carve out those exceptions, though, where parity is not desired, such as device codes, etc.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience? These are great ones so far. Here is one. This person happens to be with a multi-facility, and there's been some discussion around standardization. Have you seen any other groups standardize pricing on more of a market or regional basis, and what would you recommend for this scenario?
That's a big question. The answer depends on the price position of the hospitals in your organization. Where the different organizations fit into the market. Are they all high, low, or scattered about? And what are the revenue goals when you're trying to do this? So I'd say start small and move towards standardization rather than tackle it all at once. But yeah, a lot will just depend on the different facilities and your goals.
Okay. We will do one final call here for questions. All right, well, if we don't have any other further questions, actually, give me 1 second here. We do have another one coming through. I'm having a little trouble pulling it up here, so bear with me 1 second. And one person asked, can we charge for self-admin drugs for a lower price than what we would charge if it was given to an inpatient? That sounds a little bit complicated. What do you think, Tara?
I'm sorry, Brad, will you repeat the question?
Sure. The question was, can we charge for self-admin drugs? Can we charge for self-admin drugs at a lower price than what we would charge if it was given to an inpatient?
I don't know that answer. PMC has we have a pharmacist that helps us with these, and we can circle back if we can email that question.
Sure, we can definitely
That's a good one.
follow up on that.
Yeah, let's follow up.
And then we did get another question. I probably should have addressed this in the beginning. We will be presenting or distributing the slides after the session, as well as a link to the recording. And those will probably be sent in the next, definitely sometime tomorrow. Have a couple more questions coming in. I'm just trying to make sure I get to them all here. How about this one, Tara? Any recommendations on setting pricing for unlisted CPT codes?
Well, what PMMC would do here, we've got information from many of our clients, and so a lot of times we have an idea of what the prices are. But no, that's a little more difficult one, except for you know, to ask someone like us that may have seen these prices.
All right. Thanks, Tara. We'll do one final call here for questions, and if we don't have any, we will go ahead and let everybody get back to their day. I want to thank everyone for being so engaged and so involved in this webinar session. It really helps to make it more interactive. So thank you for asking questions. Thank you for participating in the polls. It really helps to make the session that much better. And I don't see any more questions, so I think, Tara, we're going to go ahead and sign off here. Thanks so much for your time this afternoon.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.